Hey, today we're looking at a elevator starter, specifically the Siemens 72G series. It's really common on most elevators, especially modern ones. Generally, pretty much Otis, TKE, Schindler, I think, they all use these. Even like the non-proprietary ones do. Inside the manual here, you got different way, how to wire it on the plug, which is right here. You go through, it's got what each thing does, so you can read through that to understand it. It's got some wiring schematics in there to explain how it's wired up. Shows you the different ways you can wire the motor. You can buy these starters in Y or Delta, or sorry, not Y or Delta, inline or in Delta. Let's see if I can find that for you. Yeah, here's inline, which effectively, you're instead of using the contactor on the side, you have to go through the starter and then back through there, which is inline. So you need, it doesn't have as high of amperage ratings versus here, the Delta splits the load across the SCRs in here and the fault contactor on that side. So you got to make sure you could rewire these starters anyway. You just got to make sure they're rated for what you have. And even on the front here, it says, if I can get that to focus, it's kind of hard to see, but it says on the front here what each one's rated for. It's in Delta. It shows you the horsepower, amps inline 28 on this one, and then amps in Delta 55. So if you have a motor that is an inline motor and you only got 3 leads coming off the motor, whether that motor is pre-wired in Delta or in Y, if you only got 3 motor leads, you can't wire it in Delta form, so you have to use the starter rated for that. So anyway, it explains all that here in the manual. These are true electrical soft start. These don't ever latch in. They're always firing digitally. You see that through here. How that's set up. That one's showing an inline. A bunch of different settings on here. The diagnostic menu is real good too. You can see here it shows you the on run time. It shows you faults. Bunch of different manuals. I like this menu here. The if you need to see your amps and you're wondering how much you're pulling off the line, you can see everything in real time. So that's a really nice thing to look at. Here's your different settings, and then this is just electrical specs, and then just some troubleshooting stuff in the back. These are a very reliable starter. They're used on a lot of elevators because they're reliable. Really all you need to tear it apart is an Allen set and a screwdriver. So step one is you gotta unplug these. Then unplug that. That's actually what picks the fault contactor. There's 4 bolts on the side. It opens. You see here, this is the main brain, you could call it, of this board or of this unit. These are replaceable, and they're a lot cheaper than buying a whole starter. So if you have one, you can always replace it. Essentially, you take that front little piece out there, that you unscrew this, whole piece comes out. It's one unit. So I don't know if you can just get a display or not, if a display ever went bad. It looks like you could, but they sell this as one piece, and you can see on the side here, it kind of shows you what those inputs were that we talked about marked on the board. So if you had, for some reason, the UTS go bad on there, the input or output go bad, you could replace this board without replacing the whole starter. There's a second board right here on the bottom. You see that directly ties to the SCRs. So you can actually unplug these. And that bottom board is replaceable as well. You can see it's got some like loops to read amperage. This is mostly probably like where most of the diagnostic functions come from and telling with SCR when to fire. And these SCRs also are replaceable. You gotta take these screws out, pull the wires, and then you can actually replace these. Obviously you need to check that they're rated for it. But yeah, then you just take some thermal paste, and that's because of heat sink on the back there, and you're good to go. And then over here on the fault contactor, it's just a standard contactor. You can see side here, it's got contacts in it. These generally are set up to where they're pulled in all the time, anytime the starter starts. So you'll hear it when you turn on the elevator. You hear like a thunking sound. That's what this is. As this powers up, it's saying, hey, I'm ready, I'm good to go. Pulls in that contactor and it stays in the whole time. There's ways to change that, but that's generally how most of them are set up, just so you don't wear out the contactor. But really, this should almost never have bad contacts in it. But you never know, so you always check. But that's kind of the rundown of that. It's a pretty good starter. There's a lot of replaceable components. I don't think you should ever just throw one of these in the trash. There's plenty of parts you can get off of it that you could use on the next one. Just make sure, especially with the SCRs, that you're using the right size one. Don't steal one off a small starter and then throw it in a big one and think it's going to work. It's got to be rated for it. So make sure the parts you're using are of the same likeness or a higher rating. Another key point, see that little ground symbol there? Make sure that you ground these. You'll get a lot of weird electrical faults if these aren't grounded properly. Not necessarily the starter itself, but the control system. There's a lot of power going through this thing. So you could be getting some stray voltage causing interference, especially with newer elevators that use CAN networks and whatnot. Most stuff's not hardwired anymore, it's networked. So networks are really sensitive to this kind of thing, so make sure you're actually grounding these things. But that kind of does the rundown of this starter. Have a great day, thanks.